Hello everyone, welcome to the session. Scope 3 emissions often represent the largest and most complex part of an organization's carbon footprint. While Scope 1 and Scope 2 focus on operational control, Scope 3 captures emissions linked to how products are sourced, transported, used or disposed of. To bring structure and consistency, Scope 3 emissions are grouped into 15 categories covering upstream and downstream activities. Upstream emissions occurs before goods or services reach the organization's operations. These include purchased goods and services, capital goods, fuel and energy related activities, upstream transportation, waste generation in operations, business travel, and employee commuting. Let's look at a numerical example to understand better. Consider Company X, a manufacturing organization. Company X spends 1 lakh on steel with an emission factor of 2.2 tons CO2 equivalent per rupees 1000. Company X spends rupees 20,000 on electronic components with an emission factor of 1.3 tons CO2 equivalent per rupees 1000. Therefore, the total upstream Scope 3 emissions from the purchased goods category would amount to 246 tons of CO2 equivalent. This example shows how much procurement decisions directly influence the emissions, even though the organization does not operate the supplier facilities. Downstream emissions occurs after the products leave the organization's control. These include downstream transportation, processing of sold goods, use of sold goods, and end-of-life treatment. For many products, especially energy-using products, the use phase dominates the emissions. For example, if Company X sells an electronic appliance that consumes electricity over 10 years of lifetime, the emissions from that electricity use during the period are Scope 3 emissions for the Company X. Even though the company does not control how customers use the product, those emissions exist because the product was designed, manufactured, and sold. Use phase emissions depend heavily on the product efficiency and user behavior. Designing more energy efficient products can significantly reduce lifetime emissions. End-of-life emissions arise when products are disposed of, recycled, or landfilled. Packaging materials, plastics, and electronic waste contribute to emissions depending on disposal pathways. Although these emissions occur at the end of the value chain, they are influenced by material choices, recyclability, and product design decisions made much earlier. Scope 3 accounting is challenging because data is distributed across suppliers, logistics providers, and customers. Organizations often rely on estimates and emission factors in the early years. However, Scope 3 is where the greatest reduction opportunities exist. Through supplier engagement, logistics optimization, product redesign, and circular economy strategy. Scope 3 emissions complete the picture of an organization's climate impact. They shift the focus from internal efficiency to value chain responsibility. Understanding Scope 3 emissions is essential for an organization serious about long-term decarbonization and credible climate strategy. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more such updates from ReGeneva.